Today we are going to talk about how to prune our tomatoes. We all want to grow the lovely tomato which is great in flavor, yields well, and looks good too when you show others that, oh, you have grown this tomato and the tomato plant. So to grow a good tomato, there are a number of things which you have to do. Yes, we have to take care of watering. Make sure the tomato gets enough water. We take care of fertilization, providing enough nutrients. But on top of this, there is another factor which we need to do, and that is pruning tomatoes. So before we get into the topic of pruning tomatoes, we need to learn about the two different types of tomatoes. And you would have seen in different catalogs and also heard from your friends that there is a determinate tomato and there is an indeterminate tomato. So what are these? Determinate tomatoes are the ones in which the apical bud ends up into a flower after the plant grows about 4 to 5 feet and starts putting out flowers and fruits. So they grow about 4 to 5 feet and they stop growing. You would harvest these type of tomatoes about 5 to 8 times. And some of the commonly grown cultivars that are determinate types are the Mountain Fresh series, the BHN series. These are very popular among commercial growers. There's Mountain Spring, and so great cultivars to grow for shipping, for even farmers markets and fresh markets. This is a determinate tomato. In this case, this is a cultivar called Mountain Fresh. What would happen with this is the determinate, in case of determinate tomatoes, the apical bud will end up to become a fruit bud at some point of time when the plant is about 3 or 5 feet tall, and that's it, the growth stops. The plant produces fruits, you can harvest it about 7 or 8 times, and that's it. Now the indeterminate type tomatoes, what are those? Indeterminate, as the name suggests, the apical bud on this plant doesn't end up into a flower bud. Actually, it is a leaf bud, which means the plant keeps growing and growing and growing. So you plant it in the spring or during beginning of summer, and the plant just takes off and it never stops growing till the end of the fall or until the frost actually gets it. So that's an indeterminate tomato. In the case of indeterminate tomatoes, for example, the one here, the growing tip of this plant or the apical meristem never ends up to be a fruit bud. It will always stay vegetative. It will be a leaf bud. So this plant keeps growing, and you see the twine here. This plant is going to keep climbing up and keep growing, in this case until the frost comes. What are some of the cultivars that fall within the indeterminate type? We have the Big Beef, the Big Dana, Cherokee Purple, which is more of an heirloom type. We have some interesting names of indeterminate tomatoes as well. For example, Boxcar Willie, Mortgage Lifter, and this is the one which I love the most. It brings the best of both worlds, brandy wine. What can beat this cultivar, right? So now you know about the two different types. Now we need to get into the topic of removing the suckers or suckering your plants. So before we get into there, we need to know what a sucker is, because you want to remove the sucker from a plant and not a fruiting cluster or not any of your leaves. Suckers are actually small stems that grow between the main stem and the leaf axil. So if you go close to the plant, look in the leaf axil, you'll see a new stem coming up there. That's a sucker, and that need to be removed. On this plant, again, your leaf, your main stem here, and this one here is a sucker. And what you do is you gently snap it out of there. If you do not remove suckers, the plant puts a lot of energy in that vegetative growth. So you are not able to strike that perfect balance between the fruiting and the vegetative phase so that the crop yields more and good quality as well. So removing suckers helps with the balance between the vegetative and the floral phase or the fruiting phase. Suckers also help to provide, removing suckers helps to provide more aeration, because if the sucker is there, there will be not much air movement between those plants. And what happens if there is no air movement where your plants are growing? The relative humidity will be high, and then yes, you are home to a lot of fungi, a lot of diseases which like to linger in those environments. So removing suckers is absolutely important. There are two different approaches of how you remove your suckers for determinate and indeterminate. So this is a determinate tomato plant, and we will remove the suckers. And you can see here, this is the main stem. This is the leaf, and you see another small stem that is popping up between. That is a sucker, and that person has to go. So we gently stab it out, I mean, you want to remove the sucker when it's small, not this size, but you can still go ahead and remove this. Be careful not to tear the stem when you do that. This is the second sucker. I look at here, you can see there's another sucker here. This one goes, one here goes, one here, this one here, and then one here, and the last one here. Actually, this one I leave. Now we stop at this point. In the case of determinate plants, we do not remove the suckers beyond the first cluster, because research has shown that there's not much difference if you remove the suckers from here or if you don't remove. So it's better you leave every other sucker that is beyond or goes after the first fruit cluster, because that foliage will help photosynthesize and produce more resources for the plant. In the case of indeterminate tomatoes, you remove the suckers, you keep removing it as the plant keeps growing. There is no stop. For example, in this case, we already pruned up till here. This is a sucker here. I'm going to snap this sucker out. The first fruit cluster, if this was a determinate, I would have stopped here. But since this is an indeterminate, I just keep going up. If you remove too much of the suckers, what could happen is that the plant will be more exposed to light, and then you might find some sunburn on your plant, on your fruit, and which renders the fruit to be non-marketable. So you need to strike a good balance. Some tips when you are pruning or removing the suckers on your plants. Before you start, make sure you disinfect your hands. And that is because you do not want any kind of pathogen or any kind of foreign material to bring inside your high tunnel or your plant. So keep your hands clean. If you smoke, it is certainly recommended that you clean your hands, because you are exposed to tobacco and you can bring, in some cases, tobacco mosaic virus into the plant and into the high tunnel. So please make sure you clean your hands. When you snap that sucker off, do that gently. Don't rip it off quickly and create a tear that can help the pathogens to enter. Could be a re-entry for the passage for the pathogen. So make sure you do it gently. After a few plants, let's say you prune about 10 to 20 plants, maybe you can clean your hands one more time, because if one of the plant was suffering with some kind of disease, by removing the suckers continuously, you are transmitting that disease to the entire crop. In the middle, every 10-15 plants, if you can disinfect your hand, that's fine. I know it's difficult while you're doing it, but keep that in mind, that you do not want to transfer disease from one plant to another. Now you know that why you have to remove a sucker and why is it important. Today we are going to talk about some common insect pests. Some of the common insect pests are, we have aphids, we have thrips, we have whiteflies, and they occur pretty commonly inside high tunnel crop production, especially with tomatoes and pepper. Now there are strategies which you can undertake to minimize